Tell us
So the
what you
first
want
thing
to
I
do.
want to say is, so I have a cold. Do you
you?
know about those? Do you know about those things?
Shouldn't you be wearing a mask or something?
Or all of that
to
stuff.
stop me from becoming infected by your cold.
That's it. You remember the days pre-COVID when people would had little colds? So I apologise for sounding a bit bunged up.
Yes, you sound fine, actually.
Oh, do I? Okay. Well, what I want to talk about today, and I've got to read it out again because I mean, it's so vile that I take great joy in reading it out because I can't believe this came out of deputy leader's mouth.
This would be the Deputy Labour Party leader.
The Deputy Labour Party leader, the lovely Angela Rayner. We cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynistic, absolute pile of banana republic, vile, nasty, Etonian, posh piece of scum. And then she said, I held back a little.
That's nice. Thank goodness.
So I just want to kind of go over her words and understand who was she appealing to here?
Yes.
Was she appealing to all the Labour voters that Labour Party lost? Is that she was calling them because they were first-time Conservative voters scum?
Yes.
Was she appealing to my parents who are hard-working people who came over as immigrants, didn't really know much about politics, but kind of followed what was going on and realised that the people that were best for them were the Conservatives because they didn't work for the state, they were business owners, and it turned out that being a Conservative was the best for the business owners. So these hard-working, lovely people. So she's calling my parents scum. And she feels that this language is fine.
Yeah.
She has refused to apologise for this language.
Yeah.
And I'm taking this as a personal insult.
Yes. I don't think it's done her any good at all. I don't think it's done the Labour Party any good at all. And more sensible members of the Labour Party, and I would include Keir Starmer in that, even though I'm not a fan of his, he's not happy about it. He supposedly told her off. I don't know what she's thinking, but you heard the huge cheers in the background when she said it. For all the people that she was at the meeting with.
Yes, I know, but I think that's kind of a groupthink mass hysteria.
Yeah.
It's...
No, I disagree. I think there are people in the Labour Party who absolutely and utterly believe that. And they believe anybody who votes Tory is scum. They believe that anybody who is a Tory MP is scum. And they think that anybody who went to Eton is scum. It's not the sort of discrimination that we should have in this country. Because imagine if you flipped it and made it out to be some other group of people, some particularly ethnic group of people,
could you imagine?
or gay people, or people who had other certain beliefs, green activists, you call them scum? You wouldn't, would you?
No, I mean, I think that word is a horrible
it's
word.
Vile,
it's a vile word. It's not a word I would use.
No.
But if I were going to use it, I'd save it for paedophiles and that type of person.
Definitely.
I would not be using it on just people that, are trying to
not
find
people
somewhere
who actually
to
have
vote.
a slightly different political philosophy to you.
Absolutely. And also the thing is that, like I said, I'm not very political, so I sometimes I don't vote. When I have voted, I've voted Labour, I've voted Lib Dem,
well,
I've
you're
voted
like a lot
Tory.
of people,
I'm not
Tonia.
sure.
You are driven by what you hope the people who tell you that they're going to do something are going to do.
Yes.
And if you believe in them, you will give them your vote. But
Absolutely.
more and more people, and I think you're one of them, are not really believing what they're being told.
No, and also I'm not believing what I'm told, and also I don't understand these people that are, ingrained in one political party without thought for what they're doing.
Yes.
So, that's why that so many people left Labour, because they just didn't, they're not ingrained in that party, whereas it used to be that way, didn't it? Up north and certain places.
But of course, the Labour Party have taken people for granted for many, many years. When I was in Scotland first, which was back around the beginning of this century, Labour had an absolute lock on Scotland, but they didn't do anything for Scotland. They'd always had these inner city constituencies in Glasgow, in Edinburgh, but they never improved the lot of the people living there. Some of the poorest parts of Britain were Labour constituencies because they didn't ever help them. They just kept them down and kept them voting Labour. And then suddenly the SNP came along, and now Labour can't buy a seat in Scotland.
No, because the thing is, they took them for granted. The people that I know that, the reason that the people I know who've previously voted Labour are appalled by her language. The ones that I know have everyone's cut. The point is that we should all be coming from how can we get things better? How can we make life better for everybody?
Right.
Yes, some people are rich and they go to Eton, but we're trying to improve everybody's life across the board.
Yeah.
So using this kind of divisive, horrible, vile language, how does that help society?
It really doesn't.
And especially after the last 18 months that we have had the most horrible time. It's been a horrific time. And the mental health of the nation, we discuss this often, you and I, is in shatters. And then so for this woman who's who's supposed to be the leader of a main political party, to come out and just call names and be so unpleasant. It's just so disappointing. And this is the big thing for me. These past 18 months, all I felt for our politicians, whoever they are, is a huge amount of disappointment. They are very disappointing.
Yes.
None of them do anything that I think, well done, that was heroic. That's what I expect from a leader.
Yes.
You've done something good. It's just all in the muddy waters and disappointing. And what are they doing? Why have our politicians become so pathetic and so unpleasant?
Well, I wonder sometimes as well where we would be had COVID not happened. You know, what would Boris Johnson be talking about? What would he be selling us, if you like? You know, what would he be driving Britain towards? You know, and I'm not sure that I like what the answer to that is, because I think the only other thing that he seems to care anything about is turning everything green. And, you know, as we know, that can have a massive cost to it.
A massive cost to the people that are struggling most. That's where the massive cost is. And if you really care about the planet, and I really care about the planet, I'm much less obsessed with this turning everything green. I'm obsessed with plastics. You know, during COVID, the single-use plastics just exploded.
Oh, we all forgot about that.
We all forgot about that. So because you couldn't take your own cup into a coffee shop
Right.
to get coffee anymore, you had to use a single-use plastic throwaway thing.
Yes.
The amount of masks, 2 billion masks in the sea, killing the sea life, causing the food chain to be completely ruined because the fish are eating the plastics, and they don't. These face masks, these disposable ones, they last up to 400 years in the sea. That is my concern. The plastics, the pollution are what is killing this planet. And that's something that we can do really simply.
Yes.
We don't have to, you know, give huge costs to families that can't afford to fix their boilers or insulate their houses. We can just decide, right, we're not having them anymore. The government and the world leaders can decide we're not using plastic anymore.
Yes.
Full stop. Let's
They
go back to
absolutely
before.
could. They absolutely could. I mean, supermarkets have managed to do it in quite short
Some
order,
have.
haven't they?
Yeah, some
I mean,
of
I
them
bought
have.
some lamb chops the other day, which had 70% less plastic. I think it was in Sainsbury's, because they had that sort of shrink wrap type plastic instead of the big pile of stuff around it. And I do my best if I can. If I could buy them from a butcher's, which I do quite frequently, and wrap them in paper, that's also fine.
Absolutely.
But it's not always possible. But you do what you can do, you know. But you saw that mask study the other day where it said that only 2% of people who didn't wear a mask at all got COVID. What I'd like to know is what's the percentage of people who did wear a mask
Who
that
got COVID?
Because I can bet
be
you any
much
money
higher.
it's a lot higher than 2%.
Much higher, much higher. So, you know, if you really care about the environment, Greta, I would suggest you use your platform. Actually, I just wish you.
See, she's another one who all she does now is moan and groan about the fact that nobody's doing enough.
And get on flights
Really?
from here to there.
Yeah.
It's the hypocrisy. Do you know what it is, Mike? About all these people, it's the complete and utter hypocrisy of them that sickens me.
Yeah.
I am sick of hypocrisy. I'm sick of the hypocrisy of our politicians and also those people that are standing up telling us that they're more virtuous. The celebs or the virtuous. Their hypocrisy is sickening me, and we've all had enough of it. And I feel that there is a tide turning now, that people are going to stand up and say, no, absolutely not. We're not going for that anymore.
Well, I mean, look at this ludicrous story. Fireworks. It's one of the great headlines. I did a bit of a rant about it earlier. They're having a firework display in Dulwich this year, where they always have it at the Dulwich Sports Club. Only this year, because of climate change, they're not going to have a bonfire. And they're not going to let children have sparklers. So they still want to charge you £10 to go.
So what are you going to do? You're going to just look at it on a big screen?
They're going to have a big screen with a fire on it. You know, when you go, I mean, if I haven't actually hasn't happened to me, but I've always said to myself, if I walked into somebody's house and they had a television screen with a fire on it, I'd just walk back out again. I wouldn't wait for the dinner. I'd just be going, sorry, this is not for me.
Gone. Absolutely gone. It's just everything goes too far, doesn't it? And it becomes uncomfortable and it becomes unpleasant. I mean, who is going to take their child to that? Who?
I know.
Who is going to go to that?
No
I'm
one.
really curious to know who will go to that.
I mean, it is Dulwich, and they are a bit sort of Ramonery down there, so you might find that, you know, there'll be a few Volvos. But of course, people will be driving there.
Joy?
People will drive there. They'll park their cars there. That's not very good for the environment, is it?
I mean, it's this whole thing it's like we've sidestepped talking about the real issues of the matter of the day that are really important to common people like me. I'm a common person, and we're talking about the environment all the time because we're running out of time. And,
it's an emergency.
It's an emergency, but it seems like a panic emergency that's being construed and conducted that's not completely real. A bit like the petrol situation.
Yes.
Suddenly, if it makes the headlines in the papers, then it becomes something. I'm not saying that we don't have to do something about the planet. We agree. We are overpopulated, and there's things going on. We're polluting our planet. We're doing certain things, but fear-mongering and blocking people from going to work and this behaviour is not going to help.
Also, what this kind of thing proves as well, the petrol crisis, for what it's worth, is that people do need their cars, because it's all very well in London, for the ruling classes to go, well, why don't you just take the public transport? Well, let me tell you, when my son goes to his college, there's one bus that he can take in the morning outside of London, and if he misses it, there is another one. Yeah. So there's no actual choice. So if he starts later, which he sometimes does, because his first lecture might be in the afternoon, he has to go a different route. He has to go by train. He has to take 2 trains to get to a place that you can drive to in about 15 minutes. Yeah, no, and it takes about an hour and 10.
It is an insanity.
It's hopeless.
And also, I'm going to be a little bit cross with you for being mean to the people that are queuing up.
Yes.
Because you are sometimes quite mean about them.
Well, I am mean because I don't believe that they need to be there.
I do think there are some people that have absolutely did not need to be there. We've seen that, with their jerry cans and being ridiculous. But I do think a lot of people, because of the state of our psychological state that we're in at the moment, that feeling of panic is it's there. It's left over from the lockdown. It's left over from COVID.
Yes.
And so the media, us guys and you guys and those of us that are in the media, but there are certain media channels that I could blame more, made this frenzy and caused people to panic and made them think, oh gosh, do I have enough?
Yes.
I might have half a tank, but do I have enough? What if I run out? And it caused the panic. The media are causing this. The media have caused a lot of damage in society.
That may well be true,
to blame.
and I would go along with you that certainly not all media is to blame, and certainly we're not to blame for that, because we tell the truth here at Talk Radio.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that people have been also kind of, I don't know if it's educated to do this, but have been kind of trained almost to want to never run out of anything. There's nothing wrong with running out of things. If you run out of milk, do something else. I had to make a curry the other night. Mashed potatoes, and I didn't have any milk, and I couldn't be bothered going out to get milk, so I found a can of coconut milk and I used that. Perfectly good, right?
I completely agree with you.
Whereas we're
too much.
Yeah, we've been sort of somehow made to believe that you must have everything in the cupboard, everything.
And everything on the supermarket.
Like what if you haven't got any spaghetti? Well, we use some other pasta. Yeah. I was talking to Dale Vince, and he was talking about people in food poverty, and you can buy pasta in Lidl's for 27 pence. Yeah. Now, don't tell me you can't afford to do that.
No, I mean, when it comes to cooking with a reasonable budget, it can be done. But the only problem with that is that you need to cook from scratch.
Yes.
And unfortunately, most people don't cook from scratch. They've learnt that tradition. I'm of Greek origin. My grandmother taught me to cook. My mother taught me to cook, and I've taught my daughters to cook.
I mean, my mother was a terrible cook, but she still cooked, right? Yeah. We did, because also in the 70s...
You're allowed to say that on the radio.
Yeah, she's 97.
Okay,
she loves what I say. She watches the show every night. It's fine. And hello, I'll see you soon. The point is this: that I learned how to cook, funnily enough, by working in a bakery as a boy. When I was 14, I got a job there making cakes, and I learned there was always people that were chefs and stuff like that, and I just loved the idea of cooking. So I was taught that was a great thing to do. Yeah, and I don't understand why nobody else does that.
Because we've lost the tradition. Unfortunately, we've lost the tradition. We start to think that we don't have enough time, because people's time in their day has stopped. It's become much shorter. Most women now are working. You don't have the time to cook. I get that, but we've been told this false thing that getting in fast foods or buying things that are pre-packaged or pre-marinated. I mean, that's the one that drives me nuts most of all, because if you look at the numbers and the stuff that goes in just to marinate, it's so bad for you, and you could do that in 2 seconds yourself. I just think if everybody, but again,
it's urgency, isn't it? It's like, well, I haven't got time to marinate it.
But
well, you have actually.
You have, and it's a little bit more thought. If you take 2 seconds more to think about what you're going to cook and have a little bit of a plan, you can cook really delicious food really cheaply and really quickly. Yes. It's not difficult to do. That's the main thing. And that's what I think that the government should have spent all their money on. I'm so fed up of the government frittering away the money that my taxes and the money that we earn, and I think I want to be a referendum on everything they spend now. I don't agree with the money that's been spent on the BBC.
No, the BBC is bloated beyond belief, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And now the head of it, Tim Davies, just given himself a £75,000 pay rise.
On top of what, though, Mike?
On top of what? 470 odd. So he's over £500,000 now.
Over £500,000. For what?
I know.
I want to know for what? For really getting on my nerves and making me scream and want to kick the telly. I mean, sometimes I feel like Elvis. I want to just shoot the television.
But I was listening to Kevin O'Sullivan last night, and he was talking about this, and he played a bit of this guy Tim Davies speaking before a parliamentary committee about what the BBC does, and he sounded like a character from The Thick of It. Because he was talking that sort of, what I call marketing babble, where you talk about, let's all sit down in the middle of the room and, contemplate our navels and come up with some really, really interesting ideas. And it's all that kind of rubbish, right? It's a TV company,
it translates
first
to
and
nothing.
foremost.
Yeah.
It means nothing for you to speak as though you're some kind of marketing executive from Wall Street.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't do it.
Just make some decent TV.
And make what people want to watch. Or, make educational TV. That was the one thing about the BBC that when I was growing up that I loved, because it didn't have to chase ratings. It would do things that maybe others might have thought a bit boring, but a lot of the time it was factual entertainment, and you were learning. It was educating you whilst you were watching it. Now they seem to be worse than the kind of channels that have to chase ratings in order to keep going. When did that happen? The BBC should step back. It should be a moral high ground. It should be a moral high ground on how to...
They should be making anything which would be considered to be, say, for example, something like Strictly. I mean, that's not a show they should be making. Why are they making that show? Because it's entertainment. It's not educational particularly. No. It's there for the ratings, and they'll say, oh, well, we sell it around the world and we make money. Well, yeah, but that's not what you're there for. And for a long time, the BBC used to, keep people like talkSPORT out of the market for buying rights to certain things, because talkSPORT, being a commercial company, hasn't got endless supplies of money. No. And the BBC did. Luckily, now they don't do it so much.
But I don't mind them having certain entertainment, but I definitely mind them chasing ratings all the time. And I certainly mind them having the whole thing that's going on with the Strictly Dancers at the moment. I don't know why the BBC hasn't come out and said this is personal choice. We are not going to get into this argument.
Well, at least, to be fair, at least they haven't insisted that they get the vaccine, which is good.
I think they know that that's just too far.
Yes,
I think
so.
They know that people would think that's just too far.
Also,
especially,
isn't it funny that the two people who have got COVID have been vaccinated?
Well, that's just poetic justice, isn't it? It's just poetic justice. I love that. But coming back to the amount of money that Tim Davies is being paid, I mean, something has to happen, doesn't it, Mike? We have to have an inquiry.
Well, also, he's not the only one that's being paid that kind of crazy money. Yeah. I mean, some of the radio presenters are on £1 million a year.
But for what?
I know.
It doesn't justify that fee.
But they wouldn't get it here.
Well, they don't. Well, I mean, it's not that you don't deserve it here, but no, you just don't deserve that type of tax money.
No, but the argument is always that, well, if we don't pay them that kind of money, they'll go somewhere else. Well, where are you going to go for that kind of money?
Exactly. Oh gosh, that's a really good point.
That's the point.
My point is that the BBC should be a channel that you
BBC. You've done one of those gender things.
Yes, have I done that?
They'll do that. They'll do that soon.
They'll
have International Women's Day. They'll call it the BBC.
Listen, what they should be doing, is taking talent, growing talent, and making it go through their system, and hopefully that talent will then go to commercial channels. Why not? Yeah. That's what the BBC should be doing. Yes. It should be helping
and
people
also they should be helping young people to get into the business.
Exactly.
And have apprenticeships. And
absolutely.
Actually, I mean, they've only now just started talking about working class kids, because they talk about diversity all the time in the BBC, but it doesn't matter what colour you are, they're all middle class. Yeah. So they're all the same. Yeah. It's got there's no issue of ethnicity, but what you don't see if you walk into Broadcasting House is any working class kids. Yeah, working absolutely. There because they're just not employed.
But that's what they should do. I think we should start something up to kind of I don't want to maybe cut the fat of the funds of the BBC. So not necessarily defund the BBC, but restructure it. So all these fat cats are gone, because I don't understand what he does that justifies over $500,000. I have no idea what he can possibly be doing.
It's a bit like the NHS, there are lots of good things about the NHS and lots of parts of it that work very well, but there's lots of parts of it that are completely inefficient and overfunded, and they should be fixed in the same way the BBC should.
And as we've just jumped onto the NHS, I want to ask you, Mike, when these COVID rules are going to be lifted. My mother-in-law is in hospital and we can only visit her twice a week.
Really?
She's not in a good way and we are not allowed to visit her more than twice a week. She has these endless days on her own which are not helping her get better at all, and we can only visit her twice a week. Now, I've had massive rows on the phone with the people that book, because you have to book the appointment, get an email. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. You know, if my mum had to book an appointment to see my mother-in-law, she couldn't do it.
Right.
She could not do it because she hasn't got an email and she couldn't do any of this stuff. But why are we still holding on to this thing? Why are our family and our relatives suffering in hospitals without having the comfort of their family? Why is that continuing?
I know.
What's going on?
Well, it was only this week that they said, we're going to do away with social distancing, and so we can actually put more beds closer together, meaning they can get more people into the hospital. I don't know why they haven't done that 6 months ago.
Neither do I. But this thing about twice a week to visit
That's
someone
ridiculous.
who's lying there all day long,
Yeah.
7 days a week, is ridiculous. And after I leave here, I'm going to call back and start screaming some more at them.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll
fair.
put that to somebody in the business and see what we can get from them, and see whether they can improve that, because that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and it really doesn't help people get better.
No.
Because they're just lonely sitting in those beds, and very sad sitting in those beds. We know, and this is why lockdown was so wrong, that what affects people's health is company, and loneliness is the biggest killer. It's a huge killer, and lockdown caused such loneliness. It caused such damage. Never mind about the effects of the people that couldn't get appointments to doctors and hospitals. The loneliness killed them. So we have to reverse that now.
We do, absolutely right. We're out of time already.
Again?
We thought we'd never have enough things to
I
talk. We didn't know
know.
what we were going to talk about. I'm sorry. Tonia Buxton, you've got to watch Plank of the Week. She's brilliant on it. It's in a brilliant new studio. It's fabulous. Richard Tice is on it as well, but don't worry about him. He's got his own show. This is Talk Radio.